Hi, welcome to the Nurture Podcast. I'm Iris and I'm here with Ginger. And this is the place where we explore that edge between what is and what is possible for a more nurturing and benevolent future for us all.
Mm.
How you doing, beautiful Ginger?
I'm good.
What
Yeah.
what are you thinking about?
What am I thinking about? I was just telling you actually before we hit record that I feel really confused in my life right now. And I've been trying to like sort through a lot of thoughts about I don't know, like what you should do with your business, what you should do with your life. And I've just been, noticing that there is this kind of shame. I keep going back to shame, but something about that in in the actual dominant culture is shamed. Like you should have it figured out, especially by 50 or by a certain age, or maybe not even by 50, but like whatever. You're always just supposed to have a plan. You're supposed to have it figured out. You're supposed to know what you're doing. And I think a lot of people don't know what they're doing. I think it's a myth of the culture that's ready to be burst that we should have a plan and that we should know what we're doing. I think it's totally valid to not know what you're doing. So I'm just going to throw that out to you. What do you think about that?
Well, I do think that confusion and just figuring it out as you go along is actually how it works. Like, because
Mm,
even when I have something all planned out and all the spreadsheets and all the yada yada, it's always responsive to what is and what is the moment. So,
mm,
like, does like I oscillate from being really organized to being kind of like winging it
mm,
a lot. And I think that actually that I don't think that people have it all figured out. And I think that there's a con that people do have it all figured out,
right. That's what I'm
and
talking about. Yeah.
and that con makes you receptive to letting someone else tell you what to do because
Oh.
clearly they know what to do. So I will just follow along. It's one way to like make sure that people don't access their own autonomy, I think, is to
Mm,
reinforce this idea that there are those that have it
mm.
figured out and have it together. And then there's the rest of you that just have to follow along.
Nailed it. That's a really interesting insight. I had not thought of that one yet, but you're right. That is a way to get you to question yourself. Like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, therefore there must be something wrong with me. Therefore, these
You,
people and I do find myself in these places like almost it's weird because I don't want an external authority to tell me what to do, but I almost wish someone would just show up and be like, "This is what you do." Do you know what I
well,
mean?
oh,
And I
I
think
think
especially in the self-employed realm, really any project I think that you're working on out there, but like really when you're self-employed, you just are like, there's a figuring out exhaustion that hits, like
oh,
I'm
100%.
so tired of trying to figure this out. And so, um, yeah, just like you kind of fall into this judgmental space about yourself. And then then I just spin, and overwhelm, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing at all. Just kind of
Well,
slows everything down.
we're also living in kind of crazy ass times where a lot of things are changing at like this super accelerated rate. And so there's kind of I feel like kind of like in one lifetime now, we're required to
Yes.
figure out so much complexity, so much more than than we would have like a generation ago.
100%. I just want to give you a snapshot of my Sunday night because I went to this show in Portland. It so perfectly exemplifies what you just said. And maybe it's why I'm spinning a little bit today. But I went to this show on Sunday night. Her name is Dea Dova. I hope I got that right. And she's this woman who records like healing soundtracks in like all these power places on the earth. Like the earth has these chakra points, like Shasta is
Yeah.
one of them. And anyway, she's real woo woo, super woo woo. Of course, I love that. And then her husband like is a DJ kind of guy, so like they put them together. And so there's this real. She doesn't even sing in lyrics; it's just all sounds like whoop whoop whoop,
Oh
But
my
it's
gosh,
really
so great.
It's really powerful. And she's also a grandmother. So she's a lot older. I mean, she's probably like 60, I would get. Not a lot older. But I mean, just to see somebody in that setup on stage, like a DJ, and like she's got this big goddessy like metal crown on, and she's got big wings, and she is just howling into this microphone. It was so powerful and amazing, but also very futuristic and ancient at the same time. And it was like the meshing of all the mediums. And so I was at that show and I was like, this is like very powerful, but also like what an experience to have at this weird moment in 2024. Like where this is a lot, like this is happening, you just walk
Yeah.
into these shows where they're like, calling in the ancestors and then playing DJ beats and everyone's just jumping around. It's just wild. And then on the way home, we got an Uber and the guy was driving one of those
Oh,
self-driving
oh,
Teslas. And I
yes.
have never even been in them before. And it was the weirdest experience. Like the car was driving us back to our place. And just to be in a car, and he's like, watch this. And like as he was accelerating to get on the highway, he hit the gas and he's like, make sure your necks are like in a good position. And then he hit the gas and our heads just like slammed up against the seats because that car was so fast. Like I have never experienced anything like that in any car I've driven. Like the acceleration. And I'm not here to like sell Teslas. I'm just saying it was such a futuristic experience for me.
Right after that
Right after
show
this
too.
like other weird, it was like two futures, like here's the weird self-driving car and then here's this like shaman lady. It was just like the two next to each other was such an interesting and confusing kind of
Well, and
juxtaposition of like what the hell? We are living in weird times.
also how, okay, just like thinking about cosmically,
Hmm.
we're aligned with the photon belt
Right.
every 14,000 years or whatever that's happening right now, and our sun and the northern lights, which were experienced all across the northern
Yeah.
hemisphere, and like sun conjunct Uranus on,
Yes.
on yesterday, which would have been influential on Sunday as well. So like it's like turn up the wing nut way up there.
Well, I just heard this other talk about the word weird.
Oh, which
And
is like it's witchy.
it's
It's
interesting.
bend.
It's a Welsh word, yeah, and it's spelled like Wyrrdd or something like that. But yeah, it has to do with weaving. It has to do with that what you were mentioning in another podcast, like the strange like thing that weaves through the reality. So like being weird is like having one foot in that other reality and one foot in this reality. And so I often say like we're weirdos or I'm a weirdo, but I'm like kind of owning that. Like, yeah, like you're trying to ground yourself in the present moment, like we like to do in life. And then also, we're aware that there's this whole other reality, not only that we
Yes.
want to create, like nurture culture, a better reality, but also there is just like more forces at work
Yes.
than just like our little brains and human selves. Like, yeah, like the sun, this massive solar storm hitting the planet. I mean, I'm sure that was affecting my brain. I'm sure it was affecting everybody's bodies. I was totally exhausted. I mean, you think the sun would happen. I was like so wiped out when that was happening.
Well,
Um,
can we talk a little bit about the Northern Lights?
yeah.
So, two things. One, I grew up in Michigan, as you did.
Hmm.
And I think because there's so much iron ore in Michigan, like I totally got to see Northern Lights growing up
Mm.
because, just I lived in a dark farm town, and, so we got to see them. And I had an incredibly pivotal, life-changing Northern Lights experience on the night before my birthday when I was 20.
Hmm.
And I was camped out with some friends illegally, but on top of Sleeping Bear Dunes looking out over Lake Michigan.
Mm.
And it wasn't Northern Lights, and we fell asleep, and I woke up from a dream, and the sky above me was totally immersed with rainbow light, and it totally looked like an angel with its wings
Mm.
spread above me, and it was like, like moving. And I, well, this is really personal, but like I'm like I was really wrestling with a question at the time, and I had asked for a sign, and it was like, that could not be more clear, right?
That's a big sign.
That was
Yeah.
like a big sign. And I'm like, all right, I hear you. And I dedicate my life to Mother Earth. Like that was it. Like that
Mm,
was totally like, okay, got it. All right, next step, and
wow.
I moved to Oregon as direct result of that experience.
Hmm.
And so anyway, so in my mind, like I've had this thing about the Aurora Borealis, and I've not seen them since then. So
Mm,
here we are, fast forward 34 years. And so we set the alarm and we went out, and it was like the marine layer had started to come in, and so it was real fuzzy. And Joe said, yeah, Sam, our son said that if you look at it with use your camera on your phone, you can see it better. And I was like, it was so bright, it was reflecting on the lake, you couldn't even tell what was Lake Michigan and what was sky. I'm like,
mm,
what do you mean you need to use a technology to look at the Northern Lights? That's so weird.
mhm.
And but and so I was kind of like discombobulated because we had set an alarm. Cut to the chase, I went back to bed. And Joe took a blanket out to the Scotch broom flats down by the river where it was darker, and he got to have the experience because he's from Texas. So it
Mm,
was a great experience for him, and I'm super excited. And then the next day, of course, it's all over Instagram. Everyone's got these incredible pictures.
mhm,
And two things that occurred to me about that was that one, how what a privilege to have life experiences with really dark skies, and
mm,
how rare that is, and
mhm,
how I think we've talked about this before, but like that feeling of the sky being so dark and so big and laying on the ground and feeling like you could fall up,
mhm,
and that there are literally billions of people on the earth that don't have access to that very core experience. I think
mm,
of
mhm.
being human on earth is recognizing how tiny earth is in the cosmos.
Yeah, I think that's another way we get confused. Like, because we don't have our natural like if in a dark sky before all industrialization, which isn't really that long ago, you would have had so many more points in the universe that you would reference yourself with.
Yes.
And now we're referencing streetlights and, like it our phones,
So yeah, and
like
even
you
and
just
even this
mentioned.
huge cosmic event, and
Yeah.
people are accessing it with their phones.
Yeah. I
And
just feel like we're confused on lots of levels. And one of them is like, yeah, that disconnect with Earth itself, and where we are. So when things like that happen, it does tend to kind of grab a bunch of people and focus them on like, oh, whoa, we're having a cosmic experience. We are on a planet hurtling through the space with a big giant nuclear explosion that's, setting out storms that are 3 times or 13 times the size of Earth. Like, that storm itself was so massive. And yeah, it's a really cool reminder, as was the eclipse, not even like a month ago,
right, right,
that was
right,
also a really cool alignment. So the sun has been really giving us the show,
right.
reminding us of our relationship in the cosmos. And I think that's really healing. I think it's a powerful thing. I, however, missed them. I totally fell asleep and yeah, I blew
Well,
it.
just that. So maybe if that makes people feel better, you slept through it. I got up and went back to bed. So it's just like
So feel better, everyone.
feel better if you saw it or you didn't see it. I mean, it's all it's happening.
It happened. I
It
was
just
right.
happens, and it happens like it happens frequently on our planet. We're just not
Mhm.
always in the place,
Yeah.
or it might be happening during it's yeah. But
We're gonna be in that place for a minute. Like they're predicting more of those. So like they're like
yeah,
not gonna
yeah.
be, so the chance to see it again is actually quite high because we are entering into this phase of like the
S-
stormy part of the rotation.
super
Yeah.
active
Hmm.
sun.
So be prepared to be affected.
So I feel like I want to so I tell you this long boring story about being 20, but I want that
Wasn't bored.
I don't think so. I mean, but like the how do we the perspective, like when we I guess that's what I'm like what do you call that when you step back and you have a broader
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah.
I
Perspective. And
and I think that often, like when I'm feeling like, okay, confused, like that moment on the hill, or like what's my next step, or what am I going to do, and I need help. And I think that when you're talking about, as a small business owner, wanting to have somebody tell you what to do,
Mhm.
I think that um I think it's a really weird, I think that's supernatural, super normal and natural, like, and
Mhm.
also supernatural, that
Mhm.
we are experiencing a higher degree of interdependence
Mm.
and access to guidance.
Hmm.
And that this idea that we are supposed to figure it all out, and
Right.
that some people just have it all figured out. It's like, well, what support staff do they have? Who are they
Right.
running things by? What
Mhm.
is their practice with whatever they are getting that they consider divine? Are they accessing some
Right.
greater guidance?
And I
Like,
also say like they have the system figured out. Really, that's what you're saying. Like if you have it all figured out, then you figured out the game and you're playing
yes,
it, and I'm not sure that that's my goal or ever has been,
right,
and so when you're trying to figure out something completely different, like I don't want that. I want this other thing. And then you keep bumping up against this feeling that you're doing it wrong because there's this whole
right,
culture like demanding that you like, yeah, you don't, I mean, even if you're trying to say, have your own business and like make art and like not have the whatever 2.5 cars and the three kids, or, that's not your plan. It's a different, you still, the idea even of having the plan, like, but you have to have something figured out. It can be different, but it needs to be, and I guess I'm challenging even that assumption of like, I don't think figured out is, yeah, maybe it's not even where we are anymore as a culture. Like nothing's really figured out. Everything's kind of chaotic. And I don't think it's
yes,
going to get less chaotic. I think
yes,
we're in these edge times that like you
yes,
just introduced the show. Like we are on an edge. And I think it's up to us really to adjust our nervous systems to not having it figured out. Like get real comfortable with that being normal, like more normal than we've ever thought of it being, because I think it's true. I think it's more true. Or maybe it's always been true. Like you said, I think maybe it's always been true, but now maybe it's just more obvious
well,
that
and back
it's
to
true.
to the shame stuff, is that
Mhm.
like, if this idea is that we should have it figured out, then we're not free to reach out to the support that we have,
Mhm.
in the ways of muddling through
Right.
figuring out what's next, because
Yeah.
we're supposed to have it all figured out.
Right.
So we can't ask for help, because
Right.
that would be, you know,
Yeah. And we perform. We're like, oh no, I got it. Hey, I got it. You try to like make it seem like you figured it out, like or at least you have, I've got it, I've got it. But I do think there's a deep resonance when you say, I don't know what I'm doing.
yes,
I really, so I'm willing to say that. Like at this point at 50 in my career, I don't really know what I'm doing. And I think that also there are seasons of life where you go through more of that feeling than others. Like, and it's okay when,
yes,
especially, I've been reading a good book. It's called Regenerative Business by Samantha Garcia, and I really recommend it. But she talks about like seasons of your business, like you seasons of your farm, and they have regenerative farming out there, regenerative agriculture. And so it's kind of mimicking that, but only with a business, which I found really interesting because she was like, in the spring, right? You're planting all the seeds and a bunch of stuff's going to come up and then you're going to have to weed it out, and like you're going to find what takes, what doesn't. And then some things will take and you're like, oh my God, that's like taking up way too much room. I don't even want that anymore. Like I wish I would never planted that. And there's all these things that happen when you start something new and at the same time, like you said, you also can have things going on in your life that feel like you're coasting, like you've got this part figured out. Like that's summer. Summer to me is just, you feel competent, you're doing the thing, you're busy, you're like doing it, but it's just expending energy, but there's not a lot of that like guesswork going on. Like this is what we're doing now, this is what's growing. We just got to take care of it, put in the work, harvest it. And then fall would be like when you sit back and you're like, okay, you know, reassess. Like, if you after you got the thing over with, like would it be for you be like a class or a art show or whatever, and like you sit back like, what did I like about that? What worked? What
Yeah.
didn't work? How is the audience responding? How do I feel? And then winter is like basically rest.
Mm.
So we can do that cycle all in a day. In the morning we could be like, what am I doing today? And then like we hit our stride at some point, and then in the evening we drink a glass of wine and we reassess, and then we go to sleep. Like that could be like the whole seasons in like one day, or we can just be in different parts of that. And so I'm trying to think, it really helped me to think like, instead of you either have it figured out or you don't, you're in a season, and
Right.
like go into nature for like how it works. Nature doesn't have it all figured out. It's doing one thing or next. It's either resting, or it's harvesting, or
Yes.
setting seeds, or it's always in a cycle. We're in cycles. So if you're in a cycle, it's not about getting to the finish point and figuring it out. You're not. I mean, I think that what
It's
we're looking at,
non-linear.
it's not linear, but like the culture that we're in loves summer, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're in a thing, you're just working, you're just doing your thing, you're just steady on like a factory, like a machine, just go. You know what I mean? And when and that's like the figured it out, like you've got it, you're making money, you're successful, just like drive that all, as hard as you can, like take that route. And I think so many of us are like cycling like nature. We don't do that. That's not how humans roll. We get excited about things. We start way too many things. you know, some things work, some things don't. Then we hit our stride at some points, and then we have to fall back, and then we have to collapse and rest. And like we just go through it over and over and over. So I found it very helpful to think of it that way instead of, oh, I'm going to try to find my one thing that I have to figure out, and that's who I am, and that's what I'm doing with my life. And it would even relate to like the idea of finding your purpose or your mission in life. It's like, I don't know, is that a thing? Like, do we really have to find like our one thing? Maybe we're just always in a season of, you know, one thing or another.
So what, can you repeat the name of that book?
It's called Regenerative Business.
Okay. By
There's a
Sam.
Sam Garcia. I'll put it in the
Okay.
show notes
Okay.
for the podcast. It's a great book. It's pretty new. I think it came out last year. Um, it's just it's taking a really cool agricultural principle and just putting it into the business
I,
world, which I like. So I'm doing small business coaching, so I want to have that perspective, especially because I'm coaching a lot of farmers.
well,
It's
and
really
also,
helpful.
also like I feel like the more we can take a more than human access more than human wisdom,
Yeah.
I think it helps us because otherwise, I think what you're saying is that what we're being held to non-human in a machine way standards.
Yep.
We need to get back into more like standards that are more in alignment with our bodies, which is modeled for us by the other living beings on this earth. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, plant wisdom. I mean, come on, they predate us by millions of years. They got some stuff
Yeah.
figured out. And you talk about,
Yeah. I mean,
and
it's just everything is cyclic. I mean, if you look, the one thing about Earth is, and we can see it, we're talking about the sun, it's rotational, it's cycles, it's movement, it's change. There's this idea of everything just staying the same doesn't exist in nature. Nature
no,
is a constant state of change. And all simultaneously, all around the planet, there are things going to seed. And I mean, it's all happening at once too, depending on where you are and what plant or species you're talking about. So, I mean, really, I guess the download of that is like wherever phase you're in, you're fine.
yes,
It is only when you are looking at this weird kind of consumeristic light worship being, it's got this like supremacy of the mind. Like you should have your mind all figured out. You should have your plan. You should know what you're doing. That's supposed to be really valued in this culture. Like you actually know logically, you have a setup, your sequence, you know what's going on. And I just, a lot of us don't roll like that. I'm going to say, especially women, we're on a lunar cycle. Like our hormone
Mhm.
cycles are every month, like doing totally, our bodies are going through this. Like
Yes, yes, yes.
we have more creative times and we have times we need to rest and we have to, it's just, we are cyclical animals. And I know men have their own cycle as well, but like they tend to be more like on a daily, cycle, and women tend to be on a monthly cycle. I think it's weird that we're Like no one ever explains any of this to us. We're just like dropped into this system, and they're just like, if you don't get this, then you're failing, And we're like, but it doesn't really fit almost anyone.
No. I feel like I want to write like thinking of like myself as an adult now and thinking about my inner child and like
Mm,
when we had babies, I was thinking, God, I really need an owner's manual that's not like how to F your kid up, which is kind of what like just let them cry it out and all the like ways to like help you raise children.
right,
I'm like, those are not helpful whatsoever.
right.
But I was like, what if what it is to be in your 50s is that we have the enough perspective that we can start writing the owner's manual for ourselves.
For ourselves.
For ourselves. I mean, like
Yeah,
not for anybody else, but it's like,
right.
oh, like, and you start to
Yeah,
realize it's like, oh, like that really dysregulates me. Oh, that's really helpful. Like, like
yeah. I
I
kind
kind
of think that's what it's all about. Yeah, I mean, if you really want happiness, I think it's all about trying to figure that out. Like, what do you? It comes right
of,
down to it, and I do think that part of that's what I'm doing right now as I'm turning, going into my 50s. I think I am doing that, and I think that's why it's really confusing because you're kind of like parsing out
hmm
parts of yourself that were bought into the program previously. So, like, this is the first spring I haven't been growing commercially in like 15 years. So, I am having this like weird discombobulation with not doing the planting that I've done. It's just like as a part of me,
yes.
in the spring I know what I'm doing and I'm not doing it, and I love that I'm not doing it. However, I do feel it's weird. Like I feel like there's a limb of my being, something's missing. I'm like, and also it is a connecting to nature, when you're growing. So it's just a weird, yeah, I'm just feeling a little discombobulated, and I think that's okay. I guess that's what I'm just on the that's what all this podcast is about. It's just me telling myself I'm okay.
I
But it's for anybody else listening too.
yes,
I think it's
totally.
bullshit. I don't think anybody has it figured out. I think if people tell you they have it all figured out, that's like a big red flag.
Yes. Like, yeah. And I have to say, like, having been an employer for a pretty big workforce in my scorcher years and interviewing a lot of people for jobs, the people that come in with like all the swagger and all they got to figure it out, like it totally was like, oh yeah, no. Like they're
Yeah.
not a team player. They don't
Yeah.
actually have it figured out. They're not, maybe
I
they don't, they might not know. They might
Right.
not
They might
know
not know.
themselves, but
Yeah.
like it was like, oh yeah, you're not you're not grounded enough.
Yeah. There's just it's performance. And I mean, I've been guilty of that performance in the past.
Oh,
And I think, and I know why people do it, and I understand, I totally
oh
get it. Like
yeah.
it's rewarded. Like if you, act like that's I mean, I grew up on that. Like that was just if you don't know, just pretend you do and you'll figure it out as you go.
And
There's
so
some wisdom in that, but like also there is some, like you said, you don't ask for help, you don't seem, and I think that we connect more on our imperfections and our perfections, right? When you say I'm imperfect, I don't know what I'm doing. That's where people connect with you. They're like, oh yeah, me too. Let's try to figure it out together. Yeah.
that seems like a that was that's like a little gift from the universe right there. Like that we actually are all figuring it out and
Mm,
that's the good news because spontaneous amazing things can show up
yeah.
that you could never plan for. And if you the more we can be like kind of accepting of the mystery of it all, like kind of like the more it can show up in like crazy ass ways to support us. Like if, yeah.
Yeah. No,
I
I
feel
think that's also really, really true that, you know, we if we try to figure like just part of like if you try to figure it out, you might figure out a box to stay
Mm,
safe in that you feel really confident that this is my box, but you're also in a box, right? And you're not letting like what could be like the most like beyond what you can comprehend in your little brain trying to figure it out. Like it can't comprehend what the universe could hand you if you were
yes.
willing to admit that I don't know. Like I don't know what I'm doing. I know I want something different. Like show me. Like that is a level of trust, and your nervous system has to be somewhat more like, you have to know yourself and well, like try to stay regulated in that chaotic process of being like, which is what I'm struggling with. But I know it's the better way because yeah, I can't think of the awesomeness that, the universe could dream up for me.
Right.
I don't want to, figure it out before it figures it. Like I would much rather have some wild, divine person just drop $1 million in my lap. I mean, anything could happen. This world is crazy, like you never know what's going to happen. And here I am,
Yeah.
like working really hard on my little plan, and then
Yeah.
something just you miss the thing that's like going by. That could have been so easy. I
I
think
always,
with oh, go ahead.
oh no, KMUN, the Coast Community Radio, that when they first got started, they were like, they had this like little space and they kind of needed a space. And someone said, I have a house. Do you want it? Like they were given that house. Like,
Yeah,
and it's like, and yeah. So it's like, and that was kind of like, that was a crazy windfall. And like, think about thousands and thousands of people have been benefited from that act of generosity.
yeah,
And
because you just never know.
you
Like
never know.
there's billions of people on the planet. There's a lot of things going on that we don't understand. We can't comprehend until we bump into them, and then we're like, oh, I guess we were a part of that. Like this person needs to give away their house, so and I'm the perfect organization to take it. Like there,
Yeah. And it's so speaking of good things going on, I know that you have some good things going on. Is this a good time to give ourselves
promo.
a little promo?
Yes, I thank you. It's actually almost a month away from the grief ritual that we're doing. And I am really excited about it. I woke up crying the other day, just like sobbing. And I was like, oh, grief ritual. I guess I'm getting ready. Here we go. But it just felt good to cry and like get it out. And then I felt way better, and I'm learning enough about grief and my journey that I know that not to like push it down, judge it. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, just let it. This is great. This is just a layer, a healing. And I think that there's something really powerful about, like, there's something really transformational about being witnessed by your community as you go through
Mhm.
certain emotions. Like, I think it like 30 times your healing process in terms of like
Mhm.
speed, if you can be witnessed, because
Mhm.
that is the unshaming, the unshame binding of the emotion. And also it's being held sacred. So not only are you unshaming it and you're being witnessed, but you're calling it sacred. So those three things together, kind of the lineage that's coming from this West African tradition through Sobon Fusome, who was from the Dagara tribe in Burkina Faso. And she's of a village that just grieved. That was like their whole thing. Like they're like, we grieve all the time. We do ritual after ritual after ritual after ritual. It was like their way of staying alive and staying human. Like it was their belief system. And then she came to the US and she's like, whoa, you guys, you guys have a really severe lack of
Backlog.
yeah, a real backlog of knowing how to grieve all the stuff. And she was just like so clear to her that this was our problem. Like really need to grieve personal, political, planet. Like you guys aren't doing any of it. Like it's just as
Right.
so you're so sick and you're inflicting all this pain in the world because you can't grieve. So with that in mind, there's been a kind of a resurgence of grief rituals that are starting to happen around the world outside of her little village in Africa. Now she took it out and like seeded all this magic into the world, and the West Coast couple scholars have picked it up. Francis Weller is really well known, and so he wrote a book called The Five Gates of Grief or something like that. And or that's part of his book. Anyway, it's going to incorporate a lot of that. So long story short, it's going to be in June. I think the 14th, the 16th is the dates. And it's like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be at our local Grange in Nehalem. And yeah, 3-day ritual includes all your food and everything. So it's on my website, north453.com. It's called a community grief ritual. The last one we did was 10 years ago. So, and actually
Wow.
Sobon Fusame herself stayed at my place and
Oh,
led that
wow.
ritual. That's when it was 2014 and we were just getting open with North Fork 53. I mean, like, we were just still remodeling the house and we let her stay.
Wow.
But yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's like a 10-year mark that our communities on the coast haven't hosted something this big, like in terms of intensity. But there's only room for like 25 people. So I'm encouraging. And I was talking to my mom for Mother's Day. She's like, "Are you going to have anybody who wants to sign up for that?" Like, I'm like, "Mom, I think I can find like 25 people with some grief in this culture. Like, I don't think that's
Yes.
going to
And
be
I
too challenging."
and you know that I did a ritual with Sabone Fu at Brighton Bush
Right. That's
in
right.
what 2015 or something,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that was yeah, I mean, yeah, it's my thought after doing it was, in talking to my roommate who I didn't know before the weekend or the week, was like one of the most powerful experiences of my life to do that
Mm.
work in community in that way and feeling so held.
Hmm.
And two, it's like I both cannot recommend it because it's something you have to bring yourself to the table
Yeah.
to, but I feel like it's interesting because that when I read about it, I was like, oh, I think I need that. Like I had that feeling of like
Yeah.
this was a thing that I needed. And like
Yeah.
so yeah, so I'm just encouraging people out there if they're like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly. I
it's
think if you'll know it if you're ready, like if you're ready to tap grief, but just know it's very held, and there's a really good team of facilitators, including my cousin who's coming up from California, who's leading it. He's led many of these, and um he does grief work with men almost. That's like his main focus. So want to encourage the men out there to come. And it's just, yeah, it's a community experience. But yes, it's not for everyone.
but
But it
feel
will
it if it
be
might it's right.
amazing for some. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of yeah. Yeah. So I'm just gonna say super briefly
Mhm.
that not as intense. But what I'm offering, I'm
Yeah.
not offering a community grief ritual, but I have a bunch of classes coming up this spring, this summer and fall.
Mhm.
And I do a bunch of work with kids, which is kind of like not part of this whole thing, but my regular gig. But I have a 3-day class which on use natural dyes and the book arts, which
Mm.
is going to be basically like a smorgasbord of like of expanding so for natural dyers, expanding your practice beyond just garments, and for bookbinders to empower them to like work more directly with colors from the earth and historic colors that have been used in bookbinding since, before the printing press. So
Mm. That's so cool.
that's in July 16, 17, 18.
Nice. Yeah,
It's
I gotta say, the book you gave me that you made for my birthday was so beautiful. Like, it's just
nice.
one of the most stunning things I've ever seen. So she knows what she's doing, guys. Like, if you want to get into books, and she gifted me that so I can art journal, which I've been doing, and it's just perfect for it. Like,
Oh, and it's got indigo paste paper with indigo grown on your farm.
I mean, come on. Nurture culture right there. It made me feel very special. All right, everyone.
Thank you.
It's okay if you don't have it figured out. We sure don't. So
We do not.
stumbling our way towards a better world. Thanks for listening.
Be well.
Bye.